Well, welcome to season 10 of the award-winning Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the retail advisor. I'm a retail educator, trainer, and retail conference MC. And each week, as your host, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers, and brands to dispel the myths, share their knowledge, and give you an insight into the retail industry. There's well over 100 episodes now for you to listen back to on your favourite podcast platform, or of course watch us over on YouTube. And while you're there, please hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. And if you've enjoyed an episode, don't forget to leave a comment or subscribe to the podcast to stay connected. And remember, sharing is caring in the retail industry. Share an episode across any platform with your network. And if you're on LinkedIn or Instagram, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. Oh, and a little secret we've been keeping. You can now find the Retail Tea Break podcast on Substack. You'll get to read my take on each episode, extra learnings, and lots more insight. So subscribe to the Retail Tea Break podcast on Substack today. In the meantime, then, grab a cup of tea, sit back, and enjoy season 10 of the glorious Retail Tea Break podcast. This episode of the Retail Tea Break podcast is brought to you by Smart Gifty. The modular digital platform connects gift cards, loyalty, and data into one unified experience and is used by shopping destinations, shopping centres, and retail chains across Europe. Well, what makes Smart Gifty different? It's not the technology alone, but a philosophy to treat every customer as a guest and every interaction as a moment of hospitality. Gift cards here are not just payment instruments, but a powerful marketing and insight tool. It's a true closed-loop system, meaning funds stay on the issuer's own account with no banks, no intermediaries, and no revenue leakage. The platform is fully modular, highly personalizable, supporting physical and digital gift cards, Google and iOS wallets, and can be implemented in all back-end systems. So for more information, visit www.smartgifty.com today. Today, I'm joined by a pioneering sustainability consultant and long-standing advocate for the retail sector. He works alongside store design teams, marketing leaders, and supply chain partners to rethink how physical retail environments are created and delivered. For over 20 years now, he has helped retailers transform store fixtures, in-store marketing, and retail activations by improving design decisions, simplifying material choices, and addressing end-of-life outcomes. His work focuses on the point where impact and cost are largely determined. So early stage design, helping retail teams avoid waste, reducing operational complexity, and improving long-term value. This is going to be an epic conversation. Steve Lister, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. Great to be here, and thank you for inviting me on today. Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Really excited to have this conversation. I say this is one area of retail I'm not sure I know too much about, underneath the surface. I'm delighted to have you on to dig a little bit deeper. So look, to kick us off, to kind of set the scene, in the time that it takes to boil a kettle, which I am told is about 2 minutes. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but tell us a little bit more about you and your background in this amazing industry.
Okay, well, great. Well, you framed it really, really well. So thank you for that nice intro. Yeah, look, I've been sort of like talking about sustainability and passionate about sustainability within retail. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a moment. For about 20 years, it started off in materials, and then it sort of like then when I went into some agencies and some big brands, it started to really get a bit deeper. So over those 20 years, I've been super, super lucky to work with some amazing brands on sustainability projects like Nike, PVH Group, which is like Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, Unilever, P&G. Oh, blimey, I can keep going and going and going, Melissa. Coca-Cola, Heineken. So, and like you said, let's make this really, really clear. Look, I am a sustainability consultant. I help those brands and retailers on their sustainability journey, wherever they are on it. Okay. But I understand that I'm also a sustainability realist. I'm not a tree hugger that will go in and blindly say to people, you've got to do something for sustainability's needs. Because at the end of the day, what we're here for in retail is to sell products. And that's what we do. We've got to connect with consumers. We've got to have an engaging process in the whole process, what it is, and then we've got to sell product. And that's really is at the core of what I do, is to help that whole journey piece be more sustainable.
That's fantastic. And I think that's why so many of us navigate towards you, your writings, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on your own website, your trainings, obviously, because you are a realist. You get the fact, as you said, we've got to make money here. This is a business, but we can definitely do things in a much better way. And I think it's incredible to have someone like you at the forefront of sustainability, championing it for this industry.
Yeah, a positive force. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Melissa, I understand that companies are under a lot of stresses and pressures over the last few years, coming out of COVID, move towards online, all those things that we've been through over the years, and we're experiencing a lot of challenges now. Is at the end of the day, they've got to trade and they've got to make money and they've got to be profitable for shareholders and they've got to give it an experience. But one thing I always am is I always tell the truth, and sometimes that truth is a bit difficult for people to hear. But one thing I'm not is I'm not negative about retail. I love retail, always have, always will do.
And that's exactly what we need. So, look, I suppose to start us off, for those that, as you said, are on very different journeys, which again, it's really great of you to kind of be honest about that because we're not all able to spend millions on this, nor do we
No.
actually want to. And I definitely want to get to that. But to kick us off then, 2026, where's sustainability at in the retail sector?
Well, that's a really, really good question because we've sort of like been on a bit of a high for the last 3 or 4 years. Sustainability within globally, but within specifically within retail, tends to go in waves. And the reason why it goes in waves is those waves are driven by legislations. So, unfortunately, because brands, retailers, and consumers sometimes don't do what people want them to do. They have to force them to do it. And unfortunately, legislation is the way to force people into put more positive action. So over the last few years, we've seen some, and I'm not going to bombard you with acronyms, EUDRs and PPWRs and stuff like that. You can all look at those acronyms. I'm going to make this really, really simple and keep it in a simple way. So we've been forced to make changes in our reporting, cutting our carbon emissions. That sometimes can be really, really confusing as well, right? And then we're starting to look at things like waste and waste recycling, the materials that we use. So there's legislations around those. Now, we came through the back of 2025 where there was a bit of a sort of like a pause on some of the big stuff, the EU legislations when it comes to sustainability. And that's created a little bit of a pause, a little bit of an intake of breath where these big companies have gone, oh, right, we've got a bit of a breath now for like 12, 18 months. And they've sort of come across the top of the wave and gone, right, we can just concentrate on business for a little bit rather than worrying too much. Now, one thing I will say is if you're a global brand and retailer, you've got your direction of travel already. Are they taking their foot off the gas? No, they're not. They're going to continue along with their sustainability, strategies. But some people will pull back. Now, the next big wave that's going to come through for retail is going to come through at the back end of 2026, round about August time, when what's called PPWR comes in. Lots of people have heard of it. I was at a brand and retail meeting this week, and actually some people in there didn't know a lot about it. And that's fine. It's not a big issue for them, but it is going to be a big issue for some people. So for anyone who's listening, PPWR is all about packaging and plastic waste recycling, and it's all about how much recycled content you're going to be using, the recyclability at scale, and it's also going to be about box size as well. So if you are a luxury retailer and you're selling I don't know, an eyeliner or a lipstick, and you've got it in a beautiful big box, and it's a tiny little product in the middle, you've got some challenges coming because you're going to have to start thinking about box size. Now, you might look at that and go, okay, Steve, so what other knock-on effects does that have? Now, this week, I was very lucky to be in a brand meeting and exchange sustainability confidential exchange with 7 retailers. I can't even name them because we're under Chatham House rules for that. They're now saying, well, if all my box sizes change, all of my displays are going to change. So think of all the layouts, think of all the sizes, think about all the existing retail that we've got that's built around current sizes. So yeah, so it's exciting, it's challenging. We're going to have a bit of a lull for the next few months, but it's going to kick off at the back end of 2026.
Blimey. But actually, that's what I love about you. You've made that, I have to say, you've made that sound really simple. I know
I
it's not,
hope
and I know it's incredibly costly,
it is
but
complex.
it starts to kind of prove to retailers out there, big or small, and again, I'm really mindful of even small brands out there, smaller independent retailers. This is impacting you all in a very different way and may probably ways they haven't even thought of. As you said, with a lipstick sitting on
Oh,
a shelf, now your whole POS is changing. Now how
everything.
you're recycling that has to change, like everything.
It's everything. So think of you if you're a luxury beauty brand, okay, and you walk into a beautiful, engaging, amazing store environment, and then at the back end of this year, someone's going to turn around and go, all of these boxes are going to reduce by 30%, 40%, 50%. You've got a lot of gaps.
You've also got an awful lot of re-educating of the customers because I know if I'm used to something coming, and I know brands rebrand in that respect or whatever, and times change. But however, if I'm used to getting this beautiful big package that's luxurious and really fancy, and all of a
Big,
sudden
big
this
equals expensive.
that's the thing, and then all of a sudden this tiny little thing comes through, I almost feel a little bit disheartened. So if I haven't been re-educated in advance,
Yeah.
I'm now disappointed with the brand, and I've no idea why.
Well, if you're going to buy yourself, I'm not going to name brands because it'd be unfair for me to do it. But if you're going to buy a beautiful eyeliner pencil, that pencil sharpener, that's going to cost you 20, £30. It used to come in a nice big box and you could open it and have a great experience. Now it's going to come in a little tiny one and you've paid 25 quid for that. You know,
Yeah.
so yes, there are challenges, but they're going to be good challenges, and no doubt retail will adapt. We've always adapted within the retail sector. Some will be faster, some will be sort of like early adopters and they will go for it and they'll use it as a competitive advantage. Some will be laggards, they'll leave it to the last minute or leave it until afterwards, and they'll be the brands that probably will suffer.
Wow. Lots to do, people. Lots to do. And you know
Certainly
what?
is.
The best way I say to do this, just follow Steve's lead on this. And actually, on that, you've
Yeah.
been running this incredible, really, I suppose. I want to say educational series because it has been for me. You've been running this brilliant series on LinkedIn, Sustainability Uncensored. And I suppose it's talking about these uncomfortable truths. And you see it, as you say, you see it at the kind of the coalface there because you do talk to the biggest brands in the world. You're in the rooms when they're making decisions. What are some of these uncomfortable truths that actually retailers need to be really honest about at the moment?
Well, let me just tell you the reason why I did it. Hey, look, I've been on sort of like social media for years, and you always get spikes in what people want to see and what they don't want to see. I'm always really positive about what I see. I never will
Mm.
single a brand out and tell them they're really bad because I think that's unfair to call people out in that way because there might be a reason for that. But it was sort of like pre-Christmas, Melissa, that I sort of thought to myself, there are some big untruths in the marketplace that people don't want to talk about. And people were saying to me, "Well, Steve, you're well positioned, and if you do it in a sort of a fairly positive way, because some of these uncomfortable truths do hurt, and I'll unpack some of them in a moment." So I did it, and I've got to be honest with you, I've been sort of like quite overwhelmed with some of the response I've had, and some of the posts I've had have gone crazy, 100,000 plus views in sort of like 24, 48 hours. So obviously they're getting more engagement. Have I been accused of maybe some of it is a bit more clickbaity? Yeah, do you know what? That's not a bad thing. If it gets
Mm.
views and it gets a conversation flowing and it gets positive action change, then do you know what? I've done my job. So yeah, so it's been really, really good. And yeah, I can tell you some of the things, topics I've posted which have been quite not controversial, but have had a lot of interest.
Go for it. Tell us about a couple of them because I've loved it again from an educational perspective. But as you say, more importantly, it is getting people talking, which is exactly what we need to do.
Well, so basically, I've always been sort of like talking about it all starts with design. Okay. 80% of the sustainability impact is determined at the early design stage. So that's 80% of that impact. So if you get it wrong at the beginning, you've got no chance. Melissa, literally, it's going landfill. It's going incineration. You've got no chance. So I started to pull people up about their design choices and sort of saying, hey, look, you guys have been really lazy because I've been into this store and look at this display. It's actually it's the same one you've been designing for 10 years. Why haven't you done anything about it, sort of thing? So that was uncomfortable because then all of a sudden you're challenging someone's design capabilities, but it wasn't personal. What you're saying to people is you've got to move on, you've got to develop. Like everything, you have to take those steps forward. So I tackled design, and that was really interesting. And then I tackled materials that people were using. And I was sort of like said to people, hey, look, you're making uneducated decisions here. You're just making stuff through lazy decisions. You're using MDF and bonding things together and screwing things together. They've got no chance of being sort of like disassembled and recycled at the end. And they were like, well, it's because of our manufacturing partners. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. You're the brand. You've got to
You're
understand.
paying the bills,
You
yeah.
you got it. You're paying for this as well. And also as well as you're paying for it at the end, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But then a really uncomfortable one. Now, this was probably the industry's biggest dirty secret that Steve Lister had to pull back the curtain and sort of like show people what they were doing. And that is compliance levels. So anyone who's listening, if you don't understand what that means, sorry if you all of you do. If you don't, I'm educating, even if it's just one person, I've done a good job. So basically, I produce 1,000 pieces of display today, and I send them to 500 of my retailers and tell them to put two of them out. Now, I was in a retail meeting this week with a brand, and they told me, and I can't tell you who it is, I'm sorry, I would love to. I'd love to shame one, the retailer, and I'd love to sort of like big up the brand, but I can't do it. They said, and this is factual, they said 40% of what they send into store never makes it either into the right place or onto the shop floor. So let's just take 40%, okay? That's a freaking big number, right? Okay, what if you spent 50 grand? What if you spent 500,000? That's a lot of money that's going to go straight in the skip.
And do you know what? As someone that's run stores, and again, I'm going to be really, really careful now not to point out which ones. I've done it myself, Steve. Now, look, we might be talking 20 years ago, but I know that 100% is true. And I'm sure there are lots of store managers listening that go, yeah, absolutely. Half that stuff that comes into us, we've no idea where it's going. We haven't got room for it because it's been sent in and it's binned.
There you go. Now, obviously, now let me just frame it because I like to do this as well. So I'm not
Yeah.
just going to chuck a stone in here and just sort of like say, now, store managers are busy. You know,
Yeah.
he or she are running a very, very busy shop, a retail environment. You know, do they get too much stuff in? Could do. That's not for me to say. You know, some people have told me that they don't like it because it clutters up their store. Well, there's part of me that turns around and thinks, well, if you're selling something, it makes you more money, it makes you more profitable. But we'll get off that one. So yeah, so that was the shocking bit. So the uncomfortable truth on that one was compliance levels are shocking. They're shocking. So just put your head into that. You've done all of the design, you've done all of the materials, you've shipped all the materials from around the world, you've manufactured it, you've printed it, you've shipped it, you sent it to store, and it goes straight to the bin. You know, oh my God, if the CEO of any of those companies knew that 40% of their money was going straight into a bin, right? I think they would be mortified if they knew that.
And I am. Now, the way you talk about that, but even the process, as you say, even if that brand's done everything right, they've designed it in the right way, they've used the right sort of materials, they've shipped it, so they've covered all of that and they're kind of ticking the boxes there. They've been really careful. For it to land into a store that hasn't been planned properly and for that to have gone wrong at that stage, like Steve, I'm genuinely horrified for my former self years ago.
Yeah.
And I've no doubt there's an awful lot of people out there that actually, as you say, they're so busy, they don't have time to think about the fact, look at what I've just done.
Yeah, you could have missed, don't get me wrong, you could have missed the campaign date if there was a
Yeah.
campaign date. I get all of that and I get the complexities. Now I'm only laughing because I think it's really shocking, right? And I don't think it's funny at all, right?
No.
But you've got to look at it and think it hasn't changed. I mean, I was
Yeah.
speaking to the Popeye UK and Ireland, the trade association this week once I found out the information, and they said they did a compliance project 20 years ago and nothing's changed.
Yeah.
You know, you still get marketing teams that will go in and installation teams that will do it. Some people can afford to do that. Some of them can't afford to do it. But I still think that that's crazy in 2026 when retail is difficult and we need to make the sales and all of that. That's still, even if we dialed it down and said 25%, that's still
It's
a
still too
quarter
much.
of everything that doesn't reach the shop floor.
I'm horrified, and I'm going to put my hands up here on the podcast and say I'm horrified. I was one of them back then, and I don't think it has changed. But look, I think that's definitely a
Yeah.
conversation. Having had you, and again, you explained it so clearly there, I genuinely don't think people realize what they're doing. And there's the conversation starter, really.
There you go. And then the last one on the uncomfortable truth, that really another one which I had to pull the curtain back on was waste. You know,
Yeah.
honestly, I've been to two of the biggest beauty retailers in the UK, and I've, majored with thousands of stores, and I've been to their recycling centres. And you're talking some of these warehouses and facilities have 60, 70 articulated lorries a day of waste coming back from stores, 365 days a year. And you're getting everything back, Melissa. You're getting secondary packaging, tertiary packaging, you're getting waste products, you're getting print, you're getting POS, you're getting broken product, you're getting everything. I've stood and watched articulated lorries being opened from a return of somewhere from Nottingham or Glasgow or Belfast, and they've opened the back up and literally 30, 40 wire cages of plastic wrapping boxes. And it is unbelievable the amount of waste that comes out the back of a store. Now, it's not all negative. It's not all negative because if it's a recyclable product like plastic or cardboard, those retailers get a rebate for it and they make money from it. But if it's complicated, it's been designed wrong, they have to put it in the general waste bin, which means they have to pay for it to go away. So those design challenges that people get wrong at the beginning don't get realized until they come out at the end, And then all of a sudden, someone's got to pay £200 a ton to get rid of it. So what you got to think there is, Melissa, is that's the operations team inside that retailer who then have to pay for that. Now, does the operation team work with the design team at the beginning to minimize waste? No way do they. Everyone's in their silo. Look at this great display. It looks great. It's got all these wings on and it's got all this metallic stuff on. It's all got these LEDs. And isn't it wonderful? Because we're going to sell more. And at the end of it, the bloke's having to be in the rubbish section, sorting it out and going, that's got to go into landfill. That's going to cost me £200 a ton. So there's a
Oh
real
my goodness.
dilemma. There's a huge dilemma here of cost, functionality, and sustainability. And those three things all pull and push against each other when it comes to delivering engaging, impactful retail stores.
Crikey. That's shocking. That genuinely it is. Look, it's a good thing, as you say, a lot of that can be recycled, but we need to start thinking about these nuances now. And I'm almost immediately drawn to kind of Christmas displays, of course, with the sparkles and
Mm.
the glitter and all the nonsense. And yeah, and I can just see your face there going, yeah, and that stuff just
I,
literally gets binned.
I just walk through the store and go landfill, 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 landfill. But look, at the end of the day, it's a lot of it is about education, Melissa. And there are now some great print processes that can put, glitters and different sort of like effects down, so you can recreate that. One great example, and I am going to name them, was Ferrero Rocher. So Ferrero, years gone by, were one of the biggest users of sort of like gold foils and gold
Mm.
metallics, as we've all seen them. They changed, worked with an ink producer and worked with a UK print manufacturer and a European print manufacturer, and actually printed gold ink down, or gold simulated ink down. They went from being the most unrecyclable, unsustainable product displays, and they do hundreds of thousands of these, by the way, to really being one that can just be easily recycled. And it's all down to an ink change. So, and very subtle, didn't make a big thing about it, but I bet you any money, if I went into there and asked them the key question, I bet you any money they saved loads of money. I bet it was an operational change. It wasn't a sustainable one. I bet you.
Oh, that's interesting. It's
A
actually the money
fortune.
driving the
uh,
sustainability there.
Yeah, I bet you any money they were paying a fortune for gold laminated frigging board, but they weren't paying a lot of money for the gold simulated ink to go onto a standard material. So you look at these things and you think to yourself, Melissa, wow, so they went on this massive sort of like journey. You're great, you're now wonderful, but I bet you that was driven by operational excellence and costs by procurement. It wasn't driven by the sustainability team.
But you know what? In that respect, everyone wins, and I
It
love
is,
that.
it's a
That's
win-win.
brilliant.
It's a total win-win.
Oh, and you have to look out of that. I'm thinking maybe Christmas time again. I'm going to look out for those stands because that's fascinating. But actually, on this, and again, operational rather than purely sustainable, saving the planet type stuff. I'm going to ask you something here, and I know it's going to get me into trouble, but you know what? We're talking about uncomfortable truths, so
Go
let's
for it.
roll with it. You and I both know this industry is kind of fraught at the moment with, recruitment retention issues.
Yeah,
AI is everywhere. Like it's almost banging a drum for itself at the moment. Risk security issues, I could just name them all. The industry, as always, is agile, but it's really been thrown some
yeah,
rubbish over the last few years. So
yeah, yeah.
there's plenty of things pulling on operational teams and also the budget and finance from retail. Where does sustainability fall into this? Like, is it genuinely top priority for retailers, do you
No,
think, at the moment?
no, I can tell you that right now. And that's why I'm a realist. Hello, some people don't care at all, Melissa. They don't. And you know what? It's not my job to change people's view on that. I would say you said about is it top? Definitely not. Definitely not. You've got to survive, you've got to pay your staff, you've got logistics issues, you've got all those things, you've got heating costs and energy costs spiking. So I get all of that. One thing I will say though is for the vast majority of our brands and retailers, sustainability is just embedded now within their businesses.
Mm.
It's not and this is good for me to say. It's nothing special. It's good operational. You've started at the beginning. You've looked at your staff and DE and I and all of the things about having a really lovely balanced business. Making sure it's not skewed heavily towards one gender or another gender, and then it flows through into how your impacts are and stuff like that. It flows through into operational and operational excellence. So for me, I would say it's not a priority, but it's there. when it comes to reporting and being a company that actually commits to sustainability, there are some amazing examples, people who are leading the way. And I am going to drop in some of the clients that I've worked with. L'Oreal is a huge example. The team in L'Oreal and L'Oreal's Luxe division are breaking boundaries when it comes to sustainability within luxury retail, for beauty retail. But then you've got the people like the Waitroses and people like that, got great stores. M&S, M&S, right? Under Stuart Makin, he's doing some stuff that is really subtle. They've reinvigorated the brand, but you go in and look at all their in-store marketing, very subtle. They're now embedding sustainability within really good retail environments. Yes, you've got digital screens. Yes, you've got other areas where you would immediately look at and go, that's not sustainable. But when you've got a lens on it like I have, you can see some amazing things they're doing about, the clips and the strips and how things are put up and taken down for ease and things like that. They're a great example of understated sustainability.
And you know what? That's what it's all about, isn't it? You don't
It
need to
is.
make a song and the dance. If it makes you money or saves you money, fantastic. But actually, if you can do your bit as you're moving forward, which is exactly what M&S have done, like, again, everyone wins here,
It,
and
it,
everyone,
it,
really, is satisfied by doing it.
I'll get back to AI in a minute because I've got an opinion on that. But one thing
Uh-oh.
I will say is, again, this week I was with some brands and retailers in what was called a sustainability exchange, and we run it on sort of like the Chatham House rules. For anyone who doesn't know Chatham House, and that is the rules are basically you're not allowed to say name any brand, you can't say anything. You can say the headlines, but you're not allowed to name someone or quote someone. But one of the global brands said that they had spent years worrying about the consumer and about how to educate and inspire the consumer about a sustainability journey. And they've been doing it for about 5 years. And basically, it's failed. And the reason for that is and this is my opinion, it's not theirs, is we can't assume that the consumers are going to save the planet. It's actually not our job. It's not our job. It's governments and it's brands and it's retailers to do it. And this brand turned around and said they changed their strategy through education of the retailers, not the consumers, and it's been a big game changer for them. So their conversations around the materials, what they use, some messaging, because I've got to be honest with you, Melissa, sustainability messaging just gets completely missed in store. Consumers don't see it. You might have the thing about organic. You might have some things about healthy chickens and stuff like that and eggs and things like that. But on the whole, there's a massive value action gap with consumers. I'm going to be more sustainable, but I'm going to go and buy some leather shoes and loads of Primark clothes and loads of throwaway retail. And then they come out the other end and go, no, I haven't done that at all. And it's
No,
like,
and you know what? It's something I was going to ask you. I'm like, again, like, do customers kind of notice? Do they care? And I don't think, and again, just purely from my little part of retail, I don't think they do, or they don't almost feel they have time or money at the moment to care.
that there you go. What you've just said there is actually perfect. And that is they do care because they don't want to be unsustainable. But hey,
Mm,
look, if you're a single dad or a single mum and you've got a tight budget and your bills in the last 2 weeks have just doubled in your gas and your oil, right? You're going to walk into store, whether you're buying some new clothes for your kids to go to school in, or you're going to buy a new beauty product, or you're going to buy some groceries. Is sustainability important? Not at the moment, but you still don't want to buy an unsustainable product. I still think people intrinsically will come home and go, look at the waste of this, or the packaging's awful. So I think people still have that view. But when things get tight, sustainability drops down the list of priorities. Do we walk into a supermarket and think we're going to fill our basket or fill our trolley with the most sustainable products in the world? We're like, no, one, because a lot of them cost more money,
yeah.
admittedly. There's smaller volumes and there's additional costs. But I still think consumers have high points where they think, oh, this is awful. Packaging is a big one. Packaging is a massive issue for consumers because they will look at it and go, what a waste. And I'm filling my bin up. Look at my bin every week. It doubled and trebled in the waste that I have. So there are spikes, Melissa, but I don't think we can assume that consumers will save the world because it's not their job. I've had big arguments about this with other sustainability consultants. Yes, it is. You've got to change consumer behavior. Hey, look at plastic bags, right? We change consumer behavior by that. You can't go into a supermarket now and pull out loads of bags, right? So you can change consumers' behavior. I get that.
Slow and steady. And it's that
That was
educational piece, isn't it?
that was
Drip
also
feeding.
that was also driven by retailers, though, Melissa.
Fascinating. It is when you start to think about these things. But Camille, I want to go back to the AI because you were interested in that one, and I'm always fascinated to hear people's takes. And again, you've such a different lens looking on retail and AI. Go for it. Tell us.
Well, it's just I see it, and it's on every single freaking webcast, it's every single podcast, every single webinar. Retail AI, 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 AI. Hey, look, all I'm saying here is, and I've seen some great AI stuff to do with sustainability, purchasing, procurement, streamlining operations. I get it, I get it. But what does AI mean to a consumer? Absolutely nothing, right? It doesn't. If I'm going to walk into the high street today, am I worried about AI? What's AI going to do for me today when I walk down my high street? Nothing. It is going to be amazing transformation when it comes to back office and operations. I get that bit. It might be great that you get a Louis Vuitton mirror in central London or Milan or Rome that can put all my clothes on me and can back office order and all of that. I get that. But if you're walking down the road in Liverpool or Manchester or Belfast or whatever, is AI going to touch your life as a consumer today, tomorrow, or next week or next year? Probably not. It will do in the back office. It will do in the operations. It will do in there. Can you remember when we thought that things like thingy printing was going to take over the world and we're going to do 3D printing and everyone was going to have a 3D printer in the world? Am I going to predict that AI is going to be the same? Of course not. AI is transforming our lives. Things like ChatGPT and all of those things is incredible. Retail, jury's out for me. I'm always open to seeing the next big thing. I love innovation within retail, and that. But I think the average person won't really see it for a long, long time.
So true.
Well,
And I
it could be,
completely
hey, look,
agree.
and it's the same with mobile. You might look at mobile and say we can now talk into this and we can do that, and it can do our shopping lists, and I can talk to my fridge. People don't want to do that. So yeah, people said, "Oh, I can take my phone and I can see into my fridge," right? Why? Why? So yeah.
Oh dear. Well, actually, this leads me really nicely into the next question. And it's one I've been asking everyone on season 10 of the Retail Secret podcast. What are you most excited or most curious about when it comes to the future of retail?
Oh, good question, because we've just had Euroshop. So
Yeah.
Euroshop was fantastic. Again, probably everyone who knows that is every 3 years. And this year was fascinating for me because I wanted to see what was going to happen from the last 3 years, 3 years ago, which was very overtly green. And I don't usually
Mm.
use the word green, but I mean that in color, not in sustainability, because green is a word to do with the greenwashing initiative and the Green Claims Directive. That's actually green and eco is on the naughty list. You're not going to be able to use that moving forward. So anyone who's got the words in their marketing, get them out quick.
Oh,
Oh, there's Melissa, there's a whole list of words that really you've got to be moving away from with the Green Claims Directive.
that's really good to know. That again, it's interesting for retailers and brands to be watching out for if they weren't
Oh,
aware of. I didn't know
okay.
that.
Well, if I said to you, come to my eco store, what does that mean?
That's a really good point. So I take it
Does
that's
it
on the
mean
naughty list, is it?
does it mean economy or does it mean
Yeah.
eco? I've got a sustainable product. Well, what does that mean?
And I love the fact you've said that because that
What do you
baffles
mean?
me all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a product that's recyclable. Okay. Is that 1% recyclable or 100% recyclable? That compost that's biodegradable. What, in 1,000 years? Well, that's not very sustainable, is it? So the Green Claims Directive is going to force us to use words that are more transparent and that you could substantiate those words. So you can still use recyclable, but you're gonna have to put, is it 50%, is it 1% or 100%? You can still put it's biodegradable, but you've got to put on there 1,000 years or 1 month. So it's just taking it to the next level. So to answer your question, because we segued into that, is Euroshop showed me that the next 3 years is going to be about embedded sustainability. Me and you walked around, we saw loads of different agencies, loads of different concepts. And I saw that sustainability was then embedded into retail design more. So it wasn't at the front, it wasn't green trees, it wasn't plants, it wasn't brown paper and string and blah, blah, blah. It was really lovely, beautifully, elegantly designed screens set in metal displays, which are steel, modular, 100% recyclable at the end of their life. You know, lots of wood products that were panels that you could slip in and slip out and change. So I think that what I'm excited about is how sustainability is going to be embedded And I'm excited about experience. I've always been excited about experiential retail. I love going into stores. I love getting excited about seeing something new. So for me, I'm excited about I think, people have talked for years about retail being dead and stuff like that. We all know that's a lot of old rubbish, right? Retail's coming back. I think we want a lot more experiences. We want to feel our money's going further. And there is still this human thing of being out with people in a group doing stuff. There's always going to be people who want to buy stuff online. I get that, right? But I still think as human beings, we like to be out doing things, and retail is a very, very good part. So I think it's exciting. I think sustainability will just be embedded. We won't see it as much. And I think that's a great thing. It's just going to be operational excellence rather than in your face. Look at this store, it's made of cardboard. Okay, big deal.
And I'm really glad to hear you say that. I'm looking forward to that. I think Euroshop was really exciting in that respect that, the next couple of years, it's just going to be back to beautiful retail stores
Elegant.
doing what they should do, not telling me that the stand is made of cardboard. I don't care as a consumer. I
No,
don't.
no, for the retailer, it means a lot. But that's nothing to do with the consumer.
Mm.
So for me, I think the operational excellence will be there. The retailers will have more conversations about those. But as a consumer, I still want to go out and be wowed and delighted. When I go to a store, I still want to buy this jumper. I still want to take a look at it. I still want to look at the material, right? Okay, if I want to buy another one of these in blue, I probably will just go and order it online. But I've got the brand, I've embedded into sort of like All Saints. I like that brand. I bought into it. I like their stores anyway. But I know, so the first time I buy something is normally something I'd look at and go in. And I want to be wowed. I want to look at all those things and make sure I've made the right decision. If I want to buy another color, I'd just order that online probably.
But
But then,
isn't that just, it's great retail. That's retail 101. It's the
yeah,
simple stuff done really well.
yeah.
And I think it's exciting to feel that that's even with sustainability. That's the way we should be going forward. Not labeling it as sustainable, as you said, just having really good retail.
Yeah, and we've seen retail really, really change. I mean, a few years ago, I mean, who would have thought, we had charity shops where we could take old clothes, but now we've got Vinted.
Yeah.
So now we've got a whole new world of actually, I don't want to wear this jumper anymore, but it's actually quite expensive. I paid X for it, blimey. Actually, I might want to put it online and sell it for 20 quid.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that whole thing, and again, Vinted is not positioned as a sustainable, reusable, it's a selling platform, but it's not really. It's really keeping clothes in their life cycle and getting people to use them more and more. So actually, they've never made anything about sustainability, but it's a
No, and
great,
that's a really good point. And people utilizing it aren't necessarily doing it because it's a
no,
sustainable thing to do. As you said, they just want to pass on really good clothes and maybe make a little back, and that's great.
they also want to buy it for next to nothing, with all due respect.
Anyway, moving on from Vinted, as much as we love it, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Look, I think it's definitely the way forward,
But
but
that's a sustainable business right there, but
yeah,
it's not in your face.
it's definitely the way to go. So, look, last question, because we could definitely talk all day, and we do. What's coming up next for you this year?
Big thing for me, the most I'm talking about at the moment is because obviously, if we move away from the consumer now and we get right back into the heart of retail design, we're talking about materials. Popeye UK and Ireland, I'm very lucky. I chair the Sustainability Council every quarter. And what we have there is a bunch of brands and retailers who come and talk to us. And a bit like the one I've had this week, is they tell us everything about, what their biggest challenges are. And we had one beginning of this year in January. The number one biggest topic they had was materials,
Mm.
education and materials. What materials should they be using? And we're talking everything from your cardboard and your fiber products right up to luxury products. Because obviously, if you're L'Oreal, if you're Charlotte Tilbury, if you're Stella McCartney, you've got beautiful store environments to build. Aesop, those sorts of people. So my challenge, and it's part of my background is sustainable materials, is now we're being asked more questions about materials, where do they come from, how do I recycle them, how do I get them back into circulation, can we talk about modularity, Steve? So for me, it's going to be a really exciting year talking about retail design and materials being used. And already, I've got to say, it's been a fantastic start to the year, and I think it's going to springboard us into the whole back end of it. But yeah, so that piece for me is really exciting this year. Is people are now starting to make educated decisions based upon the materials that they use across the whole retail build, including that flows into packaging as well. So that's everything, because obviously PPWR we talked about. is going to drive more educated decisions about how they make packaging and secondary packaging as well. So it is a really exciting year. I can't wait.
Amazing. I love this. And again, we'll have to get you back on as time goes on to kind of keep us
Please.
updated in these things because the insights are absolutely brilliant. They really, really are. Look, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please do share it from any of the podcast platforms. And of course, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. You can listen back to all, gosh, it's nearly 120 episodes now of the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, obviously hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. Steve, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn or go to steve@stevelister.com. You can just email me or go to just stevelister.com, very imaginatively named, and then you can connect with me there. Follow me on LinkedIn. I always put my stuff on there, I wear my heart on my sleeve, always open to advice. Direct message me if you need any advice. I'm very open about helping people get a more positive view on sustainability.
I will definitely put all those bits in the show notes so people can connect with you. Steve, it's been a pleasure. And I really mean that.
Thank
I've
you.
learned loads. I think you're so open and honest about what's going on in this industry from a sustainability aspect, but also your wider knowledge of the industry is incredible. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Really appreciate it.
A huge thank you again to Smart Gifty for bringing us this episode of the Retail Tea Break podcast. Smart Gifty is a modular experience and insights platform trusted by leading destinations and retail environments. From shopping centres and retail chains to independent businesses and tourism or food destinations, Smart Gifty empowers every place that treats its customers as guests, not just transactions. So for more information, visit www.smartgifty.com today.